Hey guys, we're out in the shop today and I thought I'd do a video on my machine and what I'm using. It's a PM727M by Precision Matthews. It's a really nice machine, fairly rigid. I do have some issues with the base. Feel like it could be a little more rigid. There's a little bit of flex in it, and I'm looking into getting granite epoxy compound into the bottom of the base to make it more rigid. And I'm toying around with the idea. Of course, you'd have to take the mill completely apart and flip it upside down to do this, so it's quite an endeavor, but it would, I feel like, solve some issues with flexing. Not much, just enough that you can tell it in the finish, and that would alleviate that issue. I think it's not that big of a deal, but of course I probably pushed the machine a little harder than what I should. I think everybody that has a CNC milling machine tries to do a little more than what they should with it. Yeah, that's the machine pretty much. Custom aluminum mounts. A buddy of mine, Sam, another YouTube guy, he's got a really terrific channel, and I followed him when he bought his machine and pretty much went by his instructions like he was trying to accomplish, to get people inspired to get into this stuff and do these things themselves. And he surely inspired me. When he purchased his machine, I was in the midst of looking at a G0704, which is what everybody pretty much was going with along about that time, which is what they've been going along with even before then. He looked at all kinds of machines, and I looked along with him because I followed his video series on his machine, and I looked at all the machines as well and decided which machine would be more suited for what I was looking to do. And all of his suggestions and decisions and things that he used to consider his purchase seemed to fall in line with everything that I had in mind as well. We had some communication, and Sam and I have become pretty good friends, I think. We communicate, we throw ideas at one another, and it's very valuable to me to have somebody to communicate with that has the same equipment that I have and has some of the same endeavors that I also have. Here is the Y-axis. Of course, I've installed these custom stainless covers over my servos, and this one, the Y, is associated with flood coolant quite a bit, so I've sealed along this back edge here with some silicone to prevent any coolant that may seep around in and get to the servo, the servo is sealed, and the connector I'm running dielectric grease on, so it's pretty much protected from moisture and coolant. And I have seals on my shafts, which is just something that I figured it wouldn't hurt to have. It's a little more money, but it wouldn't hurt to have it. So I purchased seals in my servo for the shaft. I just like to keep the coolant away from the servo if possible. The Y over here, or the X over here, excuse me, is pretty much made up the same way. It's this extension box here is for the coupling. I think Sam has his coupling window out here, which is a fantastic idea. He has a 3D printer and he prints caps for the opening out here for your access to the coupling. Mine is on the bottom. It is a little bit more irritating to get to the coupling this way, but anything that gets in there is there's a few chips in there. You see it doesn't build up. I've kept an eye on it and checked on it, and there's not a whole lot of buildup there. That's one reason why I put mine on the bottom. Looking in the back, you can see the end of the servo. It's got a heat sink on the end of it. It's these little fins. Air will circulate through those fins and keep it cool. The happy green light that it flashes when you have it enabled and it's ready to run. I have no issues with coolant dripping off of the end of this into the servo area, so I haven't done anything on the end here to prevent any backwash or whatever you would call it. Running dielectric grease on the connector again on this end as well to prevent any event of shortage on circuits or whatnot from moisture. That pretty much wipes that out. And then we both installed chains for our wiring and whatnot. I've got this R8 collet holder that I use for my main tools that I use the most. I have those in this area here. Thinking about doing something a little different. It's a little hard to keep them clean. Chips get up there, coolant gets up there. Not really satisfied with where they are. Look, I might build a cart or something to put those in outside the enclosure, somewhere where I could keep them a lot cleaner. And then there's the Z-axis. I chose to run a small fan. It has 3 bosses that can be tapped. So I installed this small fan. I think it's a 40 millimeter. Works great, keeps the servo very cool. This is the only one that I chose to run a fan on because it's working the hardest to continuously hold the head in place. So therefore it gets a little warmer, but it's nowhere near as warm as NEMA 23 stepper motors get. And I run it for hours at a time and I have no issues with heat. The contactors on this servo, I did not put any dielectric grease on because there's no moisture up there. It's always dry up there, so no problems with that. Z-axis limit switch, Hohmann switch. Pretty rudimentary mounting there, but it works. Didn't drill onto the side of the machine here to do that. Wanted to try to save that option for last if I did any of that. I figured I'd put it on the mount. Easier to replace the mount than it is the column if something goes awry there. This is the other side. Mount's pretty clean on this side. And there's some custom brackets for the chain, cable chain. Custom spacer. I think Sam done this to his. We pretty much did that little project all at the same time. I did incorporate a spindle light. It's basically a 12 volt car halo light, 100 millimeters. Works pretty good. I like it. It provides just enough light that you can see what's going on, and as the head is closer to your work surface, it will help you out quite a bit with shadows. Does away with a lot of shadows. I mean, there's some shadows, you can see them there, but when you're putting a tool in, it's a smaller profile, so the shadow is not quite as large as what your hand would be, but you can see around there pretty good with the spindle light there. I like it. I'm over 50, so I'm blind anyway. It helps. Every little bit helps. Just wired it in. That's as high as spindle goes up there, so that's clearance. Their wires go right into the housing there on the back. This panel right here, there's a big hollow opening back there. and this switch operates that spindle light. I've left this on for now. If I get a belt drive on it, I will probably take this off because there will be no way I can use this. I think Haas has a kit where he was able to maintain a little bit of travel with his manual Z feed here, but these machines, there's not much room between the top bearing support here and the top of the spindle, so by the time you put your pulleys up here, there's no room left, so there will be no way you could do any manual Z operation with that. Hey, there's the screen using a desktop, batteries for the camera, and that's just a hub for my USB interface for loading programs and whatnot. Keyboard pretty much to the right of the machine, and then to the left of the machine I have a toolbox set up for all of my tools and claws and drill bits and whatnot. I have a pendant that I use. Makes it really nice about setting up. You can vary the steps per inch by selecting this button here. It tells you there's three or four different ones. This is full jog. There's the full inch right there. That's 100 thou. That's an 1/8 of an inch. Then that's 10 thousandths. That's a thousandths. That's a 1/2 thou. It still stays on 1. I wish they had gave like a 0.1. That way you would know it was a 1/2 thou instead of using the same increment for a thousandth. Then it goes back to the full inch. So I use 10 thousandths and a thousandths and a 1/2 thousandths. I very rarely use an inch. And then there's MPG. This right here will take you back out of the 10 thousandths or whatever increment you're set on to full travel. It will generate a pulse and the machine will run continually until you stop pulsing it. And it's a power switch. You can turn it on and off. It also has a capability of, you can turn it all the way off. It still shows the display, but if you turn the knob or anything, nothing happens. So it just, nothing happens. Then you've got X, Y, Z, A, which is your 4th axis, and then you can control, if you look over here, you can go to spindle control, which it shows S, which would be your spindle, and you can change that. You see it going up